Okay, we're back. We'll zoom in a little bit. Right. So we've got the wings up, drying up here. Now this has been drying for 24 hours, so we can quite happily take off this tape now and see how the cockpit is cured up inside. Right, so gently lift the right hand side off. Oh, a couple of bits of tape yet. And there's the seat falling out. We didn't glue in that seat bulkhead. Right, so lift it off. And there we go. So we've got this nicely secured in. The instrument panel's in. It's not going anywhere in a hurry. And we've got this bulkhead, the rearmost bulkhead in. So we should be able to paint all that and detail it quite nicely. And then obviously we've got the seat bulkhead separate to it, but we'll go in prior to full assembly. We can get that glued in there and joined into the fuselage half properly. That's fine. Right. If you do remember, we had to go in, we had the control column and we had the control column actuation rod. So we need to think about, do we put that in now, or do we put it in once it's painted and detailed? So if we place it in its locating hole, it fits nicely enough. But I actually think it's going to hamper us painting the instrument panel. So I'm actually quite keen to leave this out for now. But what I might do is just dry fit it so we can glue this piece in here. Bearing in mind it's got to fit with the seat. Choices, eh? This is the joys of building models. You can build them any way you like and don't necessarily follow the instructions because there might be a better or more easy way of building it. So actually that probably will go in there okay. Without fouling too much. We'll check the back through the instructions. Yeah, very vague. I think we'll leave those off until we get it painted up. Right, so we're probably at the point now we can think about painting. We've got all the main fuselage parts ready to go. We know they fit nicely, and we can't really make any more progress on this build until we start getting some paint down and moving it on. So I'm at the point where I'm happy to just have a good square up now. There's a few more parts we might want to cut off if we want to paint and detail them fully. So we've got the engine bulkhead to go. We might test fit the engine as well. So that's something to do. I think that'll need to go in actually before we join the fuselage shafts. Let's just check. Yes, it does. Right, so we'll get the rear wheel made up. We'll get the rear rudder made up, and then we'll also get this engine bulkhead taken apart, taken off the sprues, and we'll get a test fit of everything in one half of the fuselage. And then when we're happy, we'll come and get some paint down. So give me a moment to get a few parts together, and then we'll come back and have a look. Alright, so we've been back test fitting again before we commit to start painting. And I think you can see actually that the fuselage to wing joint is pretty good. It's very solid, and if we turn it over, you get a decent fit here as well. There may be a little filling on this back joint, but we'll have to see when we get to it. But the reason I was test fitting was simply because I have done a little bit more test fitting here, and figured out that if we glue in this bulkhead here that holds the engine cradle, then that helps align the engine cradle, helps align the fuselage halves, and you can still, there's enough flex. If you don't glue this piece in here, you can just lift the engine in and out for painting, which is fine. And then that gives us plenty of time to get in, plenty of opportunity to get in here and paint as well. So that has got really the fuselage to the point where we are ready to start lashing out with some paint and to bring this, move this build along. So I'll probably leave it here for now for the construction, and then I'll paint the interiors, and then we'll come back and we'll focus on these two bits here. So we'll see you in the next episode for getting on with the paint, do the detail paint, and see how well this kit looks under a bit of paint, and then we'll move the build forward. So any comments or questions, please feel free to pop them down below. Much appreciated if you do, and I do take time to answer all questions posed and get back to you. And until yeah, that'll be it for this one until the next one we start looking at paint. Welcome back, guys, and as you can see, I have got the fuselage halves apart and the frame. So you've got the instrument panel frame, the rear bulkhead are in place, the pedals are glued in place. We've got this side assembled, the wings are together, the interior is painted, and we are ready for a bit more interior painting. Now I've also taken the time to paint on the sprue. Gosh damn, shock horror. So got the interior of the radiator cowling, and we've got the lower and upper engine cowlings done. I haven't primed the side cowlings yet. We'll do them after. I just had a bit of extra paint in the airbrush, so I primed a few bits more. So primed in Tamiya X1 gloss black. It's a really nice paint. It's got a nice smooth glossy finish. Sometimes I will put some X21 flat base, and I'll make it like a satin black. This is almost satin black, but it's got more of a sheen to it. So we need to paint the cockpit. Now, as I said in my review, this is one of the biggest drawbacks of this kit is you don't get any color callouts from border models, which is an absolute crying shame. There's no excuse for it, and it really detracts from the kit. So all I've done is gone on scale mates, and I've looked up Edard's 1/48 scale Spitfire Mark 5B instructions, and I'll just be using those color callouts. They're all much of a muchness, but the Edard colour callouts are pretty accurate, and they'll be a good enough guide for getting this interior painted. The engine I've already painted. That has come really rather nice. I'll need to check to see if any of the wiring is need to be done in a different colour. It might have had coax covering over the ignition leads to reduce interference with the radio sets, and this underneath tank or glycol tank may need to be a different colour as well, so I'll check the Edard instructions for that, but we'll focus on the interior first. So interior green, now if I remember rightly, that is simply putting on a layer of XF71 interior green, which I happen to have some. No, that's 21 Sky. Somewhere in here I do have a pot of interior green. There we go. So XF71 cockpit green, and it's quite a nice colour for for painting base coats. A lot of the well, certainly the instrument panel is black, and some of these controls on the sides are black, but we'll pick them out after. The main thing we need to do is focus on getting the XF71. Now, there is a divide with a seat bulkhead, so the front of the seat bulkhead and the seat is XF71, and the rear and back from where this fits in is actually silver or chrome, aluminium, whatever colour you want to use. So we'll need to be painting it green, letting it cure up, and then a bit of masking tape to have a dividing line, and paint the rest of this silver. The engine compartment will be all interior green, so we'll get all that painted up as well, doing both sides, and all this will be interior green as well. The best thing about this obviously is size wise, but also this gives us an opportunity to do some practice on our precision work, so we can practice some pre-shading before we put the colour down, and possibly a little bit of highlighting. In reality, you're really not going to see any of that, but it's just a nice area of the aircraft to practice with. So using my Galeri Premium Mobius 0.2, I will load up with some paint and we'll get ready to paint. So back in a minute once I'm all sorted. Okay, so got the airbrush loaded up. As always, good stir with the paintbrush, thin 50-50 with Tamiya X20A acrylic thinners, and we've got the air pressure set at roughly 20 psi. Can always dial it down with the Mac valve if we want a bit less. 0.2 needles. So let's just practice on this piece here. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it a bit better. Okay, so got a nice paint flow, focusing on the center of panels, nice random paint pattern. Trying to leave a reasonable gap between the center and the ribbing. There's a reason for that. Right, now what we're going to do is actually paint a fine mist over the ribbon as well. And that's purely because we want a nice bright highlight colour on the top of that, just to accentuate the fact that they're there. And you can see with the 2mm needle, get a nice accurate flow going across those measures. Now we can turn it sideways on. Missed a couple of panels there. And we want to capture these ones as well. Right, so there's the build-up of our base work. Now we just want to put that cover coat over. Not covering too much, just letting that pre-shade show through. There we go. Nice, motley. Finish. Now we'll put a wash on that and it'll look just nice. Right, next thing we'll move on to, I might as well do this side first because it's the easiest one to do, so we don't have an instrument panel yet. So we want to paint the inside of the framing, because when that's together we won't be able to get it. So this is underneath where the fuel tank is. And then we want to paint in here. Now, same again, not as strongly, just to focus the center of panels. And the ribs. Don't need to paint back past here because this will be silver. High spots, it's going to catch a lot of light. Let's get a lot of paint on them. And the edges of the cockpit. And then when we're ready, pull back and we'll just dash down one coat of paint. Perfect. Happy with that. Just what we're needing. Doesn't matter if there's any dark spots. In reality, the chance of seeing it's pretty slim. But what we do want is that suggestion of colour. So, we're now on to the side with the cockpit in. Same again, we want to do the interior of the framing, but we also want to do the engine cradle. And we're going to get a decent coat on that, because we'll put a lot of wash on it. We can do a little bit of dry brushing, but ultimately we want to get that painted with a good, even, opaque colour. We'll come in and we'll just do the outside the framing as well. And we'll get that engine cradle, because it will stand out against the black of the engine. There's no doubt in that. Right, we've got the front bulkhead to do. A little bit tricky because we've got a lot of stuff in the way. However, you can pick out the sort of center of panels. And then when we put in a little wash in here, that'll blend that in nicely. Right, cockpit itself, it's a few odd angles. So I want to imagine the lights coming down. So any area that's going to get the most light, we'll put the most paint on. So you want on these raised floor pieces, handles. So you're almost doing a zenithal type highlight here. Gently blow down from the top when you can see where the paint's been striking. That's where you want to put in your focused work. I'm going to paint in the front here between the two bulkheads, just purely because if you do happen to look in and see past the bulkhead, you don't want to see blackness when you could see a bit of colour. Although in reality it'll be pretty dim in there. I want to paint the bottom half of the bulkhead here, the pedal assemblies. Right, that's the beginnings of the cockpit. What else do I need to paint? Oh, I might as well paint these two bits here. And then, whilst we're at it, and we've got the paint in the brush, we'll just paint the interior of the cowling. It's not going to matter for me because, as I said before, I am going to be closing this one up. But in the effort of trying to show the aircraft and how it builds up fully, we'll get it all painted. Right, I'll just need to check, but I think the interior of the radiator is medium sea grey, so that'll probably be the last of the interior green I need to paint. Now we need to think about painting the aluminium before we then go into detail painting. Let's have a look and see radiator, aluminium and what? Oh, excuse me. Well, I think that's enough of the interior green, so let me clean the airbrush out and we'll get some silver paint organised. Yeah, okay, so before I move on to the silver, anyone that's paying attention, yeah, might need to paint the seat bulkhead. So, same again, zenithal type highlight. A little bit of shading underneath the headrest, moving down the sides. And then just a hint of colour underneath. Where in reality you're not going to see much of that. Same again on the back. So in from the top where the light's coming down through. On the top of that bar there. Just painting the fuse holder interior green. The rest of the chair will be painted whole red to imitate the Formica, and then some leather brown on the headrest. So there we go, we've got the seat bulkhead done. Happy with that. Now I will clean out the airbrush and we'll look at getting the silver down.